Hey, what is going on, everybody? Boilon here, back for another video on Raid Shadow Legends. And in today's video, I want to rewind a little bit. And today's, we're going to be doing something of a bit of a new player-ish, maybe new player, mid-player kind of video. I want to talk about, I don't know why I just randomly chose Hecaton, but I want to talk about masteries. Particularly, I want to talk about the offense tree. I've had some questions, especially in Discord and random YouTube comments, about when you want to consider using WARMASTER as your main offensive mastery and when you should be considering HELMSMASHER. This is going to vary a little bit depending on if you're a new player or a mid or late game player, because I'll just say from my personal experience from where I'm at in my roster, for the most part, for the content that I'm doing, most of my DPS nuker type characters are running HELMSMASHER. But that's not always going to be the case when you're an early game player, and you're not going to really be able to take advantage of it because the content you're doing is not going to be hard enough. For most players in the early game, you're going to be wanting to run WARMASTER, but we're going to talk about why. Also support champions as well. Now, before we get started with the rest of the video, though, I do want to remind people that if you haven't started playing Raid Shadow Legends yet, what are you waiting for? Download using the QR code in the top right hand of the screen to get the legendary Orc Artak. You're also going to be able to get a Farrakhan the Fat, Fenix, and Cryodan the Blue at level 10, 20, and 30. And don't forget about Pelops the Victor from the Argonauts faction. Great legendary champion that was the March anniversary fusion character. All you gotta do is use the promo code RAID7 the first 48 hours of a brand new account. So a lot of this is relevant to clan boss. We're going to start here as to where this kind of makes sense. For a new player, you're obviously starting with Demon Lord and you're working your way up on that. And then maybe at some point, it varies, from person to person. I would say, actually, you know what? Early Chimera is a lot easier to break into. It's like easy normal mode, this kind of stuff before you get into Hydra. Hydra does take some time to break into. For a lot of players, it could take as long as like 4 to 6 months before you get like a good team. Now, hopefully you can work your way to like one normal team by by 4 months that you have something that you can put together 6 characters for and at least get some of the early chests. It's better than nothing. But Chimera is a lot easier for you to just kind of take your Demon Lord team, copy and paste this into Chimera. Now, I want to talk about the stats because this is why it matters, right? The various difficulties. And there is a great website, Hell Hades' Stages tool. This is very helpful when it comes to taking a look at this kind of stuff. And that's exactly what oh my God, I didn't mean to zoom in that far. But anyways, you can see on the left, can we get it more centered? It's all like stuck here on the left-hand side. But anyways, this is Demon Lord in the Void Affinity on Ultra Nightmare. Yes, I know some people might not be that far, but to illustrate my point, the defense stat of Demon Lord at Ultra Nightmare is 1520. This kind of matters because if you look, we're going to go back to the Masteries again, right? So if you look at HELMSMASHER and what it does, well, it ignores defense. Like most of my characters have this, I think, right? So let's just take this here. Go to the Masteries tree. We'll click on HELMSMASHER. Has a 50% chance of ignoring 25% of the target's defense. For skills that ignore defense, this 25% is an addition. Okay. The thing is that if they don't have very high defense, then there's not a whole lot to ignore, if that makes sense, right? Otherwise, you could just have higher attack, and then that would almost make up for that instead, right? So if we go back to Ultra Nightmare Demon Lord, he's only got 1520 defense. So 25% of that is like, I don't know what, like off the top of my head, it's a quarter, right? So just under 400, 375, something like 375, I think, is 25%. So that's not a lot. Like, this is stuff that you could easily make up for with additional stats in attack. So you're not getting a ton of use out of HELMSMASHER here on this particular fight. And obviously, if you're not even there yet, I meant to go, why did I say normal down here? Nightmare, right, is at 847. So there is a big jump of stats between Nightmare and Ultra Nightmare, but he's got shit defense at Nightmare mode. It's honestly really crazy. So that ignore defense is basically does nothing, right? You're better off just getting like an attack percent chess piece or something like this for your DPS characters. My point is that when it comes to climbing clan boss, Demon Lord, and going into Ultra Nightmare, you're going to get a lot better value on WARMASTER, and this is usually the common wisdom. that when you're an early game player, you know, you're most likely going to be picking up WARMASTER for the vast majority of your characters, including support characters. Has a 60% chance of inflicting bonus damage when attacking. That bonus damage is equal to 10% of the target's champion's max HP, 4% when attacking. Bosses, damage can only occur once per skill and does not count as an extra hit. So this does a lot of damage, right? Because it's enemy max HP damage. You're going to see that this triggers quite frequently when you're doing things like Demon Lord. And to the point where you pretty much want all your characters to have this, including your support characters, which a lot of mine, I'm just trying to find my raw support characters. Not all of them do, actually. But, you know, in my early game, a lot of them do. My Mavara has it. I'm just like, where's my raw supports? My Senna has it. My Donatello has it. My Estrid has it. You know, and so on and so forth. Don't have it on Glorious Palace. But, you know, most of my support characters are running WARMASTER, right? If I'm running raw support characters, you can see it here that WARMASTER is down here on the bottom right. So that's pretty important. But then what if once you've kind of like got to Nightmare Demon Lord, once you've got to Ultra Nightmare Demon Lord, and you kind of done that, well, you're moving on to the other ones, right? To Chimera and to Hydra. And it's really good to kind of look at the different stats on this. Now, I want to bring us back to the Hell Hades Stages tool. In this case, it is Chimera. So this is Chimera on Brutal. We're going to take a look at Nightmare and Ultra Nightmare as well as to what the stats, how the stats jump. So just at a quick glance here, this is Brutal, and defense for the ultimate form, like the regular one with all the heads, has 4,700 defense. That is like over a tripling of what the defense is of Ultra Nightmare Demon Lord. We have 5,700 on Ram, 3,300 on Lion, it goes down a bit, 4,000 on Viper. So that 25% from HELMSMASHER that ignore defense is going to be significantly more. We're talking now about 1,000 defense in some cases worth of ignore. And this is going to matter too when you decide to move on from, you might have heard the term stats versus sets. This is a very early game mantra when it comes to gearing. Now, this is not a gearing video at all, but my point is that at some point, you're going to want to move past the stats, a part of the gearing, and move into sets, especially for your damage-based characters. So moving into things like Savage, you know, if you're a Pass Buyer, then maybe Instinct, Slayer, Lethal, if you're managed to farm this from Doom Tower, these kinds of things where you're going to get ignored defense. Merciless as well, right? We're moving towards ignore defense is going to be that much more important because their defense stats are significantly higher. Now let's just jump to, I know not everyone's, and this is where things get a lot crazy with Chimera and Nightmare and Ultra Nightmare, but I just want to show you to illustrate the point there, 6,400 defense on the ultimate form, and then Ultra Nightmare has 8,000. So this is the point where you really need to have ignore defense for your characters that are going to be doing damage. This is like paramount because that 25% on top of whatever you're getting from gear is going to make a significant amount of difference, right? That defense stacks up a lot harder on higher content. That is what, and actually it's not even just this stuff, but also you're going to notice that when you run hard mode dungeons, now not necessarily, you might be able to do this with stat-based gear, but you'll see a significant damage reduction in running, say, Fire Knight's Castle hard, that, you know, running hard mode on this, that you're going to hit a lot less, even on the waves, to be honest. So this is where ignore defense is really going to come in handy here as well. Things like the hard mode dungeons, not normal. I don't think they have really that much high defense, but when it comes to basically hard mode for a lot of this stuff, you're going to want to make sure you have that ignore defense and or HELMSMASHER by the time you get there. So that's pretty important. I want to jump one more time back to the Hell Hades things again, and then let's take a look at Hydra, right? If you're trying to build for that. Now, even on Brutal, there's only 4 difficulties here. We could do hard mode, right? And hard mode has 3,700 defense, 2,000, 8,400 on the Head of Suffering, 2,000. So it does vary, right? Head of Wrath is 3,200, Blight 2,800. All of that is over double of what Ultra Nightmare Demon Lord defense has. And that's the kind of the point that I'm trying to illustrate when it comes to the defense and ignore defense and how impactful it is on harder content. Brutal, we got 7,500 on the Head of Decay. Sorry, that's attack. Sorry, 4,650 on the Head of Decay, 9,500 on the Head of Suffering, 3,800, 4,000 on the other heads. Right? Sorry, no, there is no Ultra Nightmare. Nightmare, we have 6,200, 4,000, 11,000. 3,500, 53, 5,000. So all of that ignored defense is just going to be much more significant than WARMASTER, which is also only a single target thing anyways. So that is when you're going to want to start building towards that. But when you're currently in the early game and you're working towards that Demon Lord, it's not a big deal, right? If you make a new account, if you make an alt account, if you're a new player, you're going to be doing this what's called stats over sets. Now, I really need to re-gear my Tholen. What does stats versus sets mean? Well, it kind of means that make sure that you're running, an attack 60% or 50% if you're using a 5-star gear piece. And it might not necessarily matter what sets you're using, because the raw stat gain that you're going to get is going to do better than trying to put together a set that's kind of not so good, right? Because you don't have the total amount of gear pieces to make a good set. Now, eventually, at some time, once you've kind of reached that kind of Ultra Nightmare Demon Lord level and you're moving on to higher clan bosses in Chimera and in Hydra, that's when you're going to want to start thinking about sets, right? So I know this is a Forge Pass set, Instinct, which is ignore 20% of enemies' defense. This is where you're going to start finding more of this stuff, right? So, I mean, there's, just to go back into my mind, there's more. There's early game, you're going to get this in Savage. Where's my Savage? Ignores 25% of enemies' defense. And if you're not a Forge Pass buyer, this might be your earliest kind of entry into ignore defense. And this still is quite valuable for a lot of players. Luckily for me, I don't really need to do this so much because I have other gear that does a little bit more, right? Ignore and does more. We'll take a look at some of those sets as well. Just trying to find. Cruel does a little bit, right? So if you're kind of having to crutch on this, if an attack-based champion that scales on attack, that's important because there are DPS champions that scale on defense and HP, you could use Cruel, right? 6 pieces of Cruel will get you up to 15% ignore. It's not as good or easy to do as Savage necessarily, but this comes from Demon Lord, so this can still suffice anyways. And there's a lot of sets in this game, I'll be honest. As we scroll through, Fatal does not do anything. Lethal. Now, this is going to be from the Dark Fae Doom Tower rotation, which is not now, but I think it might be next month, right? Or the next rotation. So this is a crit rate of 10% and ignores 25%. So it's basically Savage, but with extra crit rate, which is still very important. It's one of the best free-to-play obtainable gear sets in the game that gives ignore defense, and also making sure that you get to that 100% crit cap is going to be really important for the vast majority of your DPS champions that need that. There's the occasional champion that can crit without the crit rate, but those are niche. And then as we scroll down, the rest of them are kind of quote-unquote bide. That was bad English. Paid. The Instinct Forge Pass, like I mentioned there. And then we also have Merciless, which comes from Cursed City. Merciless is really great because you get a 35% ignore defense when you're at a 6-piece. This will take a while. And even for me, I don't have a ton of amazing Merciless 6-piece sets. 9-piece Merciless, even better, right? Because it stacks up crit damage, more crit damage, and chance of getting an extra turn. But getting that with the accessories is really challenging. To get the 9-piece, you need the accessories. That comes from Cursed City hard mode, and that comes from specific nodes, and also from killing Amius. So it's not so easy to be able to do that. Those are the main ones. I think Slayer has some ignore defense, doesn't it? Yeah, well, ignore defense when you're using AoE attacks. It's actually pretty good. I like the Slayer Forge Pass. I think that might be coming around soon. For the accessories, I might actually give that one a go. But aside from that, those are the quote-unquote more likely ignore defense sets. And eventually, once you get to the higher difficulties and the higher challenges, like hard mode, dungeons, like Hydra, like Chimera, that's the kind of gear that you're going to be looking towards building for the vast majority of your DPS champions. I got a 6-piece Merciless here on my Storm Herald Hecaton. I'm using Instinct, don't ask. On Tholen Falbeard, I have an Instinct set. On Leonardo, also don't ask, that's just the best set that I was able to cobble together. But as you can see, Lethal on Michelangelo. So all of my main kind of damage-based champions are going to have some sort of ignore defense at where I'm at, because that's the kind of difficulty in the content that I'm running, right? And I just wanted to kind of just share that with you guys because I had a lot of people asking me about this. Mainly the difference between WARMASTER and HELMSMASHER and the situations where you're going to want to have one over the other, right? HELMSMASHER for the vast majority of players is going to be more for, I want to say, ender game players, or probably players once you've, mastered Ultra Nightmare Demon Lord, and that's when you're going to be moving on to the other kind of content. So I hope that this helps. There's a lot of things in Raid Shadow Legends, for lack of better words. There's a lot of things to get to know, and if you're a newer player, or hey, maybe this actually gave some information to players who weren't kind of in the know as to why they're using some masteries over the others, right? Some people do rely on the Hell Hades character profiles, and it shows you a list of masteries. Sometimes it says general PVE or things like that, and you kind of want to know why. You know, why are they recommending these things? Well, I hope that this kind of separates as to why you want HELMSMASHER and why you want WARMASTER. Anyways, guys, that's it for today. Now, before I go, I do want to remind people that if you haven't started playing Raid yet, what are you waiting for? Get out from under that rock, get that legendary Orc Artak, get Farrakhan the Fat Fanax, and Cry It in the Blue at level 10, 20, and 30. And the extra legendary on your hands here is using the promo code RAID7. Oh my god, I can't even talk. To get the legendary Argonite, Pelops the Victor, within the first 48 hours of a brand new account. That's it for me, everyone. Have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next one. And if you like this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and you'll be greatly helping out the channel. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys on the next one.